Welcome back to another YouTube video, you beautiful hosers. So I just want to get a quick little apology out of the way here. I know I said there was going to be a video on Friday. Unfortunately, I didn't have an inkling of an idea what to do. So I hope this video makes up for it instead. Upon scrolling through YouTube on Friday night, or maybe it was last night, I don't quite remember. I'm fairly certain it was Friday. But anyways... Actually, no, I take that back. It was Saturday when I did this. Anyways, a little sidetrack there. Anyways, through scrolling through YouTube, I found there was a lot of videos that were talking about what's it like to lose a parent and what to do when you lose a loved one or what it's like losing somebody that you love. However, every single video that I could find, not a single one talked about what's it like to lose both of your parents. Obviously, this video is going to be from my own perspective at my own age. So bear with me on that one because I'm well aware not everybody is going to go through the same stages, but I feel like it's just something that's not actually talked about here on the platform or at all in general, because generally nobody wants to talk about it. It seems like it's a very taboo subject. You have one side of the spectrum where people care for maybe about the first week, and then after that, it more or less, people forget about it. Or a year later, if you're still grieving, people tell you, why can't you get over it? Yeah, it's more along the lines of nobody is asking if you're really okay a lot of the times. And a lot of the times when they're asking if you're okay, they're not actually asking you if you're doing all right. And what I mean by that is they're asking the question, but they really don't care about the answer. There's always going to be people in our lives that actually ask questions and want to actually hear the answers back. And then you have other people that just want to ask questions, but they don't want to hear the answer. Kind of like a rhetorical question where I'm phrasing it for you, but I really don't want the answer. So without any further ado, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the video. I think I've rambled on for enough. So, what's it like? Well, I can tell you for starters, it sucks. And, yeah, congrats everybody. We just summed up the entire video. Yep, click off now. Bye. No, in all seriousness, things that you never used to take for granted, you now take for granted. And you think about all of these what-if scenarios, what if things had been different. For me personally, losing my father at the age of 18 and then my mother at 19, it's been a rough patch. Yeah, especially 6 years apart from one another. I can't exactly say that's any easier. Well, almost 6 years, almost 5 and 11 months, I think it was. Anywho, I'm not going to waste time trying to figure out the math there. However, there's certain things that we play the what-if scenario where we constantly think of why and what if things could have been different? What if my parents could have watched me get married? What if my kids could have got to know their grandparents? That sort of stuff. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where some people, they may be glad their parents are gone, but those people generally are hurting more than they think they were, and they just don't necessarily really want to address it. Even though technically all stages of grief is denial. Denial, anger, mourning, and there's a couple of other ones that I'm forgetting there because I believe there was 5 steps. And I think we just covered 3 of them. Anyways, there's different phases to everything that everybody goes through. Losing one parent is bad enough, but as soon as you lose the second one, that's generally when you get the reality check, especially when your parents were people that you were comfortable talking to, telling them almost everything, and more or less if you're close with your parents, it hits you a lot harder than somebody that wasn't necessarily close with their parents. Some people in particular never grew up knowing their parents. So for those ones, I can't exactly say anything out of experience because I have no freaking idea about that entire thing. However, for those of us who had somewhat of a connection with our parents, it gets to the point where we kind of know why things are happening, but we also don't at the same time. It's kind of like screwing in a light bulb, scratching your head, wondering when's the light going to turn off, and then realizing that you forgot to flip the switch to turn it off and you're wondering why you're getting shocked. That is probably the worst way I could have put this, but anyways, moving on. A lot of the times we don't understand what's even going on with our parents, especially when they pass away from medical complications. In my case, both of my parents technically had medical stuff. That is the reason why they passed away, with my father being a stroke and with my mom being, well, everything that was more or less wrong with her decided to hit her all at once. So, going from that basic knowledge, I also know my father was also dealing with stuff internally that I didn't know exactly why he was doing the things that he did. I was forever and a day getting kicked out of the house and couldn't exactly figure out why. And then information came out after his death as to why his personality had changed. So I got a deeper understanding of what had happened. Yes, those last 5 years of his life may have seemed like a living hell to me. However, I understand that there was a reason for it, and it wasn't technically their own doing. In my mother's case, I'm fairly certain if she had a choice, she would still be here today. But as things would go, well, obviously we all know the answer to that because we're making this video here. So, with being on both sides of the spectrum, sometimes it's just the fact of we need a deeper understanding of what went on, and not so much of, well, I feel this way, so I should have to feel this way all the time, right? Well, that's not exactly the case at all. So, losing both your parents so close together at an earlier point in your life, it hits a lot harder for the simple fact of, if you were closer to them, it takes longer for you to realize that your more or less source of venting about things, life in general, what's going on in your head, work, so on and so forth, you can't exactly do that with them anymore. So you look to other people to try and vent to, and obviously not everybody's going to want to listen to somebody rambling on about random things all the time. But on the odd case that somebody does want to listen, they're not probably going to understand more so than a person that's actually gone through it. I'm not the only person in my family that's gone through this, but it doesn't mean it gets any easier the more people it happens to. Technically, it gets a lot harder. For example, if your father knew how to do something and you're trying to, let's say you're working on a engine, and your father was somebody who was doing a lot of mechanic work and rebuilding a lot of engines and doing that sort of stuff. You can't exactly walk up to him and say, "Yo, Pops, could you come help me with this?" Because now you're technically on your own and the feeling sinks in of, I really have no idea what I'm doing. So, you have that. And then on the other hand, you have, well, generally I think everybody should know this by now, that women generally are more nurturers than men are. And that's actually a scientific fact. That's not just me randomly saying it, being like, it has to be true. It is scientifically proven that women are more suited and accustomed to being the nurturers, and they actually do a better job of it than the men do. Not saying men can't do it and women can't have the role reversal there, just saying right now, as science would show, it's that direction. However, when you have a loving, nurturing mother and you're trying to, what's the word here? Not process. Let's just say process. When you're trying to process things and you're always going to them for wisdom and so on and so forth, generally, they'd be able to tell you how it is and how it's going to be. And then you more or less take that knowledge and be like, okay, I understand. You're loving, you're caring, you're telling me what I need to hear, even though I really don't want to hear it right now. And generally, they're the ones that also take care of you when your father's at work or your mother's at work. The father looks after you. But as soon as that outward source of both are gone and you're trying to go through life without them, it's not easier going and asking a stranger questions than it would be your own parents that you were close to. And not everybody's going to understand what you're going through. They're just going to expect that you go somewhat back to normal. But the thing is the new normal for you technically is not going to be a new normal for somebody else who's gone through it. And somebody else that's gone through it will generally tell you that there's certain things that you used to be able to do, you can't really do. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, no doubt, they're not there to talk to. I can't say anything to them, and anything I do is more or less just cursing a dead person. But in the sense that I'm in reference to here is, for example, when you're going out and doing something with your parents, that's something you're not going to be able to do. So we're not talking about talking, we're talking about the physicality portion of it. For some of us, it's full of regret. Things that we wish we should have done that we didn't do, and now we fully regret it. And now, obviously, it's a little too late for that one. However, for other people, it's more of a sense of relief knowing that they're no longer in pain. So it feels like a weight's been lifted off of their shoulders. However, that weight can feel rather daunting after it's lifted, because now you're trying to figure out in your own headspace going, what am I supposed to do now? After I've done this for X amount of years, now signs are pointing to something else, and I'm really confused about where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to do with my finances, and you're just running through all this different stuff in your head trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do from here? I had a straight mission, and now it's kind of veering off in 40 different directions. Which path am I supposed to choose? Generally, that's the point where you just have to take the knowledge that your parents had bestowed upon you and use a little bit of discernment to be like, okay, situation sucks. What are we going to do from here? We understand that there's certain things that we can't do. We're going to have to figure out what we can do and where we're going from here. So, taking the knowledge that your parents gave you technically would lead you on one of the better paths, but that's not always the case, because it's more or less the saying, different strokes for different folks. Just because one thing worked for somebody else doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you, because sometimes, let's face it, our parents don't always give us the best of advice at all times, especially when they're joking and they're giving you advice. Yeah, you should really go and lick a window. Bad advice. Not good advice. Take it from somebody who's actually stuck their tongue to a window in the middle of winter and ripped the taste buds off of their tongue. So if somebody's telling you to go and lick a window, tell them no. So, for example, that sort of stuff, if they're joking around, obviously don't take that advice, but when they're actually having a heart-to-heart talk with you, generally that's the information that you need to retain. Because not only is it going to help you in relationships, but it's also going to help you with moving on in life. Now, for my father, he spent quite a few years of his life without having his own father around, which I never got to know my grandfather. So my dad understood what it was like to lose a father, but my grandmother, my dad's mother, is still alive today. Which kind of raises the question of, well, he understands half, how come he wouldn't understand the other half? It's because until it happens to you, you don't fully understand the extent of what's happening. Because generally, a lot of us, like I said before, and I know I'm beating a dead horse here, we're like running to our parents, telling them every little detail, and then running away after they give us advice. And as soon as that's gone, then it's more or less you have to figure things out on your own. And some of us are more mature than others, so if you're not exactly able to stay level-headed at times, you're going to find this a lot harder. It's just like anything in life. If you're just easily frustrated, you're going to get more progressively frustrated and depressed after you lose your parents. But going back to the moral principles of what it's like to lose your parents, is it's more or less one of the times in your life where it's your time to figure out things on your own. What are you going to do? And how are you going to treat others that are going through the same thing? Are you going to be sympathetic and understanding of what they go through? Or are you just going to be sitting there going, well, you should feel like this because I felt like this when I lost my parent. Notice the word parent, not parents. As soon as you pluralize it, it makes it a lot harder. Because some people, they don't necessarily stop grieving the first parent, and then after the second parent passed away, we'll say, it just hits a lot harder. So things that you used to think were somewhat of the new normal now become a thing in the past, and you kind of want to get stuck in your own headspace thinking about things that were so much better back when they were either both around or when you still had one. And then you have the what-if scenarios kicking in of, well, I wish I could have done this if I knew when the time was. And it's just basically one big moral dilemma where it's different for everyone. But my own experience, it's a lot harder than losing one. Losing both is a lot different for the simple fact of, if you feel like going out and doing something with somebody and you don't have a whole lot of friends or you don't have a significant other, it makes it a lot harder. So the only relationship you really had at that point in time is now stripped away. And you're just trying to muddle things together, trying to keep your head up, keep your head on straight. Head up, head on straight, same thing. And then trying to figure out, well, where do we go from here? There's 40 different branching paths. I could take any of them, but which one is the best for me? Is it to choose to properly grieve or suppress it? I don't recommend suppressing it because when that stuff comes out of that bottle, it makes it a lot worse than what it would have originally been if you actually dealt with it right then and there. And technically, losing both your parents doesn't take a couple of months to fully get through the emotions. It can take up to years. And for me personally, I don't know how long that's going to be. But I can tell you without a certainty of a doubt, it sucks. And when you lose both of your parents, it's just one of the things that you look at as, well, I know that I wasn't going to have them around forever. How well did I best prepare myself for this likely scenario? And the younger you are, it really puts things into perspective of, I'm going through most of my life without my parents being around to see any of my triumphs or my falls. The only person that gets to witness it is you and the people that are watching you. So, I hope that helps a little bit. I know it's a little bit of a rambling, and I can't exactly phrase it any better, unfortunately, because it's a touchy-feely subject, obviously, and it's one of the ones that's not exactly one size fits all, because it's still, different strokes for different folks. Everybody handles it differently, and everybody takes it differently. There's certain people out there that have lost their parents that have never stopped grieving them. And to tell those people, get over it because I did, technically is the worst thing that you can do. The only thing that you can do is try and be understanding and lend an ear and listen. So anyways, I hope you're having a fantastic 2022, and if you're not, I hope it gets better for you sooner rather than later. Peace out, and I will see you all next month.